Hey everybody, welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. I'm your host, BMR. As always, I'm joined by the bearded one, Tex. If this is your first time here, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to hit the alert bell. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Front Porch. You can also reach us by email at paracryptidencounters@gmail.com or by text at 972-559-0988. Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube's Bigfoot Michigan Rob. If you enjoy our content and would like to support us, the Super Chat is always open, or you can Venmo us at symbol at text617. Thank you and enjoy the show. You know, Tex, I mean, yeah, I see you grooving back there. That again, I have said this once, I'll say it again. Nice dub over with that music. It gets me fired up. We have a great guest to get fired up over anyway, but man, every time I hear it, I'm ready to roll, man. How's it going over there?
I dig that little tune, brother. I mean,
yeah.
It's jazzy, it's smooth, it's
it's like
get your blood pumping, kind of get your toes tapping.
Yeah, it's like smooth radio. If I was to say to start a radio station, it'd be like smooth jazz with the bearded wonder Tex or something. But yeah, hey, thanks to everybody joining us today in chat room. Thanks to everybody that's listening live and is going to listen to us later on in the evening, next week, next month, whenever. Just always remember, subscribe to Texas Front Porch and Bigfoot Michigan Rob. And Tex, man, I'm going to get right into it because this man's a busy guy. He's always busy doing something. We've had a lot of great guests, Tex. And I always say that, but we've never really had one of this magnitude, kind of a celebrity. We have Ken Gerhard.
You haven't.
Oh, well, okay, fine. I have. And that's no slight on any of the wonderful guests we've had, right? Because I love them all each equally. But I got an autographed book, The Essential Guide to the Loch Ness Monster by Ken Gerhard. And here it is. You guys buy this book. I highly recommend it. I'm sure you can find it anywhere where books are sold. Thank you, Ken. He's a cryptozoologist. He is an author. He's a TV personality. You can also see him at the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, along with me, Tex and Jason, coming up in June. For the first time ever to Brunch with Bigfoot, we welcome Ken Gerhard.
How you doing, Ken?
Can you hear us?
So we do fine right up until the show starts, and then his audio goes to pot. I love it. It just doesn't get any better. You couldn't
not get any better. He's just smiling.
Good afternoon,
He's trying to
guys.
get it to work.
How are we doing?
There we
go. Oh, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on your show. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, now y'all are gonna have to bear with us because
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you, Ken. We got you now, Ken.
Are you? Can you?
I think we're dealing with a little bit of delay.
Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me right now.
We can hear you right now. Can you hear us?
Testing 1 2.
Oh no.
Oh,
testing 1 2. Testing. All right.
We hear you.
Cool. Hey guys, how we doing today?
We're doing good, man. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Oh no. Well, it looks like the gremlins have found the BMR show. So
all right, cool.
Oh Lord. You know,
we're to say the same thing. Yeah, go ahead, Tex.
He said, he warned us. He goes, "Look, guys, I've had to stay at the zoo a little later."
Yeah,
today.
I can hear you fine.
Ken, you are so far you're lagging so bad, brother. Try jumping out and getting
Thanks
back
for having
in.
me on your show. It's an honor to be here.
So what we're going to do is we're going to drop him out.
All right.
And get him
Good deal.
Yes. We're going to drop him out and come back in.
Yeah, and try to come back in and see what happens. Have you got his phone number?
I just got my
Awesome.
message.
Yes, I can hear. Yep.
Oh, I love this. I love technology sometimes. Okay, he dropped out on his own.
Okay.
Tiniest Squish, I have not seen you here before. You know what? Since he's trying to log back in, Nicole Masuri, have I seen you here before? You kind of sound familiar. Of course, we got Gemini Moon. We got, you know what? Lisa Lou, Sharon, Sandra Piper, Monogard Nash. I have not seen that one, I don't think. A lot of new people, guys. This is awesome. And Randy, quit complaining. You know, he told us when he first signed on that he was in his car because he was having to spend some time at the zoo a little later than he expected. And we're back. Let's see if we got him. And we're buffering. Hang loose with us, guys. Hang tight, man, because we're trying. Hopefully he'll pop on in a minute. But
testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Can you hear us, Ken?
Hey, guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but you're lagging.
Yes, I can. Yep.
Oh, Lord.
I can hear you.
It's
bad, Ken.
It's about a 10-second delay, man.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Hey, Ken, cut your video feed and just go audio and see if that helps.
Huh. Okay. I can try to log on to a different network. Let me see what I can do here. I can tell you. Testing 1 2.
Oh, wow, that sounds better. Can you hear us?
We hear you.
Well, there's a lag. You sounded good.
Okay. Hold on a second here. Let me see if I can get to onto a different signal. Yes, sir.
We better?
Just do audio only.
There you go.
Okay.
Is that
idea.
better?
Hello?
Hang tight.
Okay. Everybody, it's live. It's live radio, live TV, live streaming.
There we go. Hey, you got us, Ken?
Now you keep coming.
Okay. Hang tight.
All right, I'll be right back.
Testing 1 2. Turn it.
1 2. Can you hear me?
I'm trying to turn. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can
Power's
hear
off.
you. Can you
And
hear
it's
us?
just audio only. How's that?
Yeah, it sounds good. Can you hear me right now?
Testing 1, 2.
I can hear you, but can you hear me is the question.
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me okay? Testing 1, 2. Yes, I can hear.
Okay, I think
I can hear you.
we're experiencing about a 10-second delay here. It seems like.
Yes, I can.
So
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Ken, brother, I'm. Oh Lord.
All right, let me see if I can close some things up. Testing 1, 2.
We hear you.
Guys, if you want to wait, can you hear me okay?
Can you hear us?
We can hear you. You can't hear us. It's on a delay.
The only other option. Yes, I can hear you. I'm afraid the only other option, I hate to do this to you, is I can try to move to a different area or something where I get a better signal or something, but I guess we could try that if you want.
Yeah, why don't you try that, Ken? And if that don't work, we may
Testing
have to
1, 2.
try moving.
Testing 1, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and
Hello?
change locations, Ken. And if that don't work, we'll just have to reschedule, brother.
Testing 1, 2.
Because we hear you.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to drop him backstage and we'll just wait on him.
So,
I apologize, guys.
Yeah, everybody, yes. Live, text.
This would be a good time, though, to talk about what we've got coming up in the future.
We absolutely could. We absolutely can. And I can start off by saying that we will be being broadcast on Odyssey Radio coming up very soon. And you're going to be able to hear us live on iHeartRadio. That's
and a
one
lot of
thing.
other platforms too, yeah.
And a bunch of other platforms. Is on Odyssey Radio, we'll be streamed on many platforms, including iHeart, which will be live. So it'll be a little different. It's awesome. We're going to get out there to the masses. And we couldn't do that actually either without our audience, our people in chat, and the people who listen to us, because certainly to get picked up, they want to have a quality show that has an audience already. Right. And so thank you to everybody that tunes in each and every. Well, we're 4 days a week, Tex. If you want to elaborate on that, go right ahead.
Well, we got Mondays, of course, we've got Texas Front Porch Live, at 6:30. And then we've got Wednesdays. We're working on Tuesdays, with Bob Van Buren. And then Wednesdays, we've got Jason McLean Questions Everything, which that show was last night. Those shows are fun, guys. We we get to let our hair down and relax a little bit, and we talk about things that are all over the map. And it's not just the cryptid stuff. It's not guest driven. So you get a lot of banter between us, and you get our thoughts on stuff. And it's a little different, and I like it. We've never done a regular panel type show, and it's enjoyable. I mean, it really is, because we get to kind of cut up. And like I said, we talk about a whole different we even touch on, I won't say politics per se, but what's going on in the world. And we're rotating in, so you won't see the same crowd every day, but it is going to be permanently. It's going to be Jason and Rob, permanently, right? Rob?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah. You said Rob, like, but yeah.
But it's going to be you and Jason on that show, permanently.
Jason McLean questions everything. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Jason and I, we're rotating out everybody else on how their schedule goes. And I'm sorry, Tex, I had to step away for a minute. And we had a great show last night. And the thing that I love about that show is we cover like everything. Everything is still going to be unusual, high strangeness with a twist. You're not going to, if you're expecting Dogman and Bigfoot, it's not going to be a specific topic, right? But then again, like last night, Tex, you're talking about the rabbit hole that we deal with, what came up, for an instance, right? So it's great. It's great entertainment, but it's also value talking about things that other people aren't talking about on shows. The reason why we're expanding to 4 shows is just to have variety, but with that unknown twist. We still like the rabbit hole. We still like the unknown. So that's all going to be involved in all the shows, but we're trying to be different than everybody else. And that's what we strive for. That's what we do strive for. I think you might have been talking about that already, Tex. So
yeah. And then we've got our newest show, which is going to start next Friday. Yes. And I am excited about that one. And
I'm totally stoked. No one's doing it.
Yeah. I put the teaser out there on the channel, and it's Jessica Jones, man. She's joined the team, and she is going to be doing remote viewing different things, different cases, different. Well, it's like the first show is going to be the I can't even pronounce this right, the Dutloff Pass,
right,
and
awesome.
Incident, and of course that's where a supposed Yeti attacked all these college students in Russia in the 1950s, and they found them all dead under mysterious circumstances out there. They found evidence where they cut their way out of the tent and ran unclothed, but she's actually going to remote view that and try to shed some light, because there's a lot of theories out there of what happened. Avalanche, big, Yeti, government, aliens. I mean, but so, and I think that with her insight, I think we're probably pretty much as far as I'm concerned, we're going to put it to bed, because she's very talented. I mean, she's accomplished. She's helped find missing persons before. So it's not something that she hasn't proven her worth in, So.
And what you say too, Tex, is right. This is one of my favorite stories. Am I coming through good now, Tex?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. So one of my favorite stories, as you just mentioned earlier, we've got an avalanche. We've got possible aliens. We got possible Yeti. We've got possible Russian government. That's just a handful. So, and with Jessica and her skills, we're going to, I tell you what, we're going to get close to an answer. And what's great about this is the story's so perplexing. There is no finite answer, right? It's everything I just said and what you just talked about. It's just everything is questionable.
Right.
Nothing is fact. Nothing is finite. There's no definitive answer. And I tell you what, I think we're going to come close to those answers. And it might be bold or brash to say, but we've got a person on our team that has these unique abilities. And it's going to be a fascinating show. The whole channel itself on Fridays at 8 Central is going to be fascinating. And we'll probably be rotating out us personalities on Texas Front Porch, which is going to be cool. We'll always have a panel type people on there because people seem to dig that. And I'm excited. I'm just excited for our entire show, all of our shows. We're going to be on broadcasting live on different platforms. And again, because of our audience, you guys made this happen, and we love you all.
Well, you know what? Jessica just popped in the chat. She is here, guys. Y'all show her some love. You know, it is, and go over to her channel and subscribe to Cryptid Huntress, man. She's got some great stuff over there. Because she's not just a remote viewer. What you got to remember is she's a paranormal investigator. She's a Bigfoot, researcher, and their team documented a porthole and people walking in and out of it. This is they documented this stuff, guys. I mean, this was
fascinating.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I've always been on. I've never walked through a porthole that I know of, but I do have an instance where I've got I can't remember what it was, 5-6 hours of missing time.
Yeah,
out in the field. But I don't remember walking through anything. I don't remember anything except, walking through the woods. Nothing strange to me ever happened. I never had any ill effects from it or anything like that. But who knows?
And I do want to make mention that for all of our guests tuning in, I shouldn't say, I've been in business. I say guests, I say customers. All of our audience, our listeners just now tuning in. Yes, our scheduled guest, Ken Gerhard. We've had audio and video difficulties. He's maybe going to try to get back on. If not, we do have to reschedule. So I do apologize for those of you out there that were looking forward to seeing Mr. Ken Gerhard. But hey, things happen on live streaming, and he'll either come back on or we will reschedule. But it does give us the opportunity to talk about our fantastic new member to the team, Jessica Jones, and that's going to be a great show, Tex. And I can't fathom the topics we're going to explore because nobody's doing it. And
I got to tell you,
I'm ecstatic.
And I'll tell you what, something we just started putting up is if you'll go through our tabs and you'll look under channels, we have some channels that we're featuring and stuff. And so you can look under there and all of them are, we got, Spaced Out Radio. We've got Jessica's channel. We've got, What the Paranormal. We've got Duke's, Bigfoot Radio on there, and some others, and that list is going. I just posted the link, Mary. So that is, and that list is going to be growing because we're really making some great, friends. In this circle, and it's the relationships that we're building. I'm really enjoying because meeting these people that are doing this because they love it. They're not in it just for their money, and don't get me wrong, like Bigfoot Odyssey. Kerry does that stuff because he likes helping people and he wants to get awareness out there. And he's one of our featured channels also, And of course, I've known Kerry for several years now, and he's always been a big supporter of ours, and vice versa. But I think the stuff that we're going to be doing in the future, I'm very excited about.
Yeah, Tex, I am too, and again, all our supporters, and I think what we see in our audience really is this, Tex. I think because everybody listening, we do put a lot of time and research into this to provide quality content for our audience, our people that are in chat, the people that are eventually going to hear us over the radio. We tap into what your interests are. So the reason we decided to rebrand and expand is because we're not just going to be considered a Bigfoot channel, a cryptid channel. We're going to tap into everything. Now, I'm going to say, as I mentioned earlier, it's still going to be high strangeness. It's still going to be things that we question.
Right.
Maybe times we question our own sanity, things that are maybe that you can't believe. But we're going to cover it all, from the cryptids to the paranormal to ufology. I mean, we talk less government. I mean, not the political side of government, but what they've known about disclosure and what they've seen in
Right.
moving forward. So it's a variety. I can tell you what, if you don't like any of the 4 channels, then you shouldn't be tuning in. And I can say that with confidence because there's something for everybody going forward.
Oh yeah. I mean, and not only the shows, we're not the one of these channels that just talk about stuff.
Right.
We're out there doing the research too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's now we haven't got you boots on the ground yet, but we're going towards that. So, we're going to have people on our team that are researching here in Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana and, in the surrounding states. Now that we've brought Jessica on board, we're going to have her out there in the field in Georgia and those surrounding areas. And then once we get your boots on the ground, we're going to have, up in Michigan. Well, good grief. It's hard to beat Michigan for high strangeness. I mean, it really is,
Absolutely. We've got the wilderness north of me. We've got the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes alone, you could write a novel on.
Oh yeah.
It's too bad we didn't have Ken on because I just got his book and it talks about the Loch Ness Monster, but also aquatic cryptids.
Right.
We've got that here. We've got underground military bases. We've got UFOs flying out of Lake Superior and taking off. I mean, we've got everything. You've got manufactured Dogman. Wexford County is the capital of Dogman. So yeah, when I get everything squared away here, I'll be out there. My thing is, Tex, I can't find a partner to go with me. Everyone thinks I'm nuts, right? But that's why I do what I, and I don't want to venture by myself all the time until I get my stuff together. But it is what it is. And for those just joining us, Ken Gerhard, technical issues. We're probably gonna have to reschedule. I don't foresee him coming on. If he does, That's great. So for that, it's just Tex and I kind of gloating about our channel and all of our awesome audience. But we do this positively. And Tex was also saying we have great personalities, hosts and co-hosts. Correct, Tex?
We do. And one thing that I think we really need to let y'all know is
breaking news, Tex. Ken Gerhard is going to be home in 5 minutes. So he'll be joining us in 5 minutes. And thank you for that, Ken.
Awesome. Can't wait to have him back. So y'all hang in there. We might stretch the show a little bit depending on Ken's schedule. And, maybe we can get a full hour out of him. If not, that's okay too. But until that, what I want to talk about is you'll see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to put the link in the chat here in a minute, is the Alabama Bigfoot Conference coming in June. And the 3 of us, for sure, possibly Bob will be there too. I don't know yet. But the 3 of us are going to be at the Bigfoot Conference, and we're going to be speaking at the Bigfoot Conference, as well as Ken Gerhard will be there. Cliff Brackman will be there, and several others. But the link is BamaBigfootConference.com. So go buy your tickets. And a great way. And guys, this is not your average conference. The proceeds of this conference are going towards something that I love. I love to support, because we're actually helping raise money to give 2 individuals scholarships to the forensic programs there in, at the college. So, I mean, what better cause,
I think that's a great cause. And a lot of people do functions. They have conferences. and you question where funds are going or what it's for. It might be something frivolous, and this is awesome. It's going to academia, and it's something that I can back for sure.
You know, and it's I don't know. I think it's awesome that you know, the Bigfoot community is able to give a gift to the mainstream, you know,
Right.
and maybe we'll be able to go, you know, we're not tinfoil hat wearing nuts, you know. So I don't know, maybe it'll help in that area. I hope. I really do. Because if we could, I mean, because I would love to sit down and have a conversation with a professor of forensics, you know, not even talking about Bigfoot, just talking about evidence collection, where you can get this stuff, you know, rendered at. Those are great conversations that you can have, you know, and knowledge is power, guys. And we need a lot of it in this community to be taken serious, because the time has not arrived. I think it will, but the time has not arrived yet to where when it gets, say, Bigfoot is on the news or somebody else is researching Bigfoot or seeing Bigfoot, the newscaster starts it out with a smirk on their face and a chuckle.
Yeah.
Because it's still a joke to them, you know? And for so many of us out there that have had these encounters, like yourself, Rob, I mean, you've had traumatic encounters, you know, this is not a joke, you know?
It's not a joke, and for a lot of people, it can actually affect them deeply.
Yeah.
Just as recently as 2 days ago, I was on Duke on World Bigfoot Radio, going over. Thanks for that, Duke. Everyone, go check World Bigfoot Radio out. Duke Sullivan. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I was on talking about my encounter, and again, I always talk about my encounter. I'm not going to go into the encounter, but it was traumatic for me. I was a success. I am still. I was successful at running a business for 13 years, and you guys, when I had my encounter, I had nowhere to go. I didn't even know what the hell I seen. I didn't go to work for 6 months, and I relied on my people that worked for me to take my money. I mean, we shared, but it was my business. I relied on them to put it in the bank account because I couldn't get out of bed.
Right.
And of course my girl passed away, and that had a lot to do with it. I was just in a deep, dark place. And until I finally talked to like a Duke Sullivan, I finally met Tex, it helped me. And people say, I realized I wasn't crazy, because I thought I was going nuts, to be honest with you.
Well, and when I know it was hard for you when she passed away, but you went through a period of time where you legitimately thought that encounter had something directly involved with it.
I did. I thought that Bigfoot, or whatever it was, I always call it a demon because of the transformation.
Right.
Which today I know it was Bigfoot, and I just know that, like any critter out there just protecting their young or their family, they are going to show a different face. And I believe it was not something interdimensional, or I don't think it was a demon today. But back then, yeah, I thought I was staring the devil straight in the eyes.
And the Squatching Cowboy brings up, that the comedian there, Bigfoot is funny to a certain comedian. And the thing about it is when you talk to a lot of people, not all of them, but a lot of people that look at this with a chagrin and but then you offer to take them out and have their own encounter, they won't know part of it.
Right.
And you're like, well, if it doesn't exist, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
And then they start changing their tune. You know, it's like, or they hide behind the fact, well, I don't need to go out because it's fake anyway. I know people like that. And I've been flat out told that what I do, this channel included, and my research is stupid. That was their exact words to me.
Yeah.
Because I told him, I said, well, you think what I do is stupid. He looked at me and goes, what you do is stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, to get out there, you got to have a thick skin. You know, it's like Jessica was saying last night. We've got to have thick skins because you're going to run into not just skeptics, but hostile skeptics.
Yes.
And that's another good channel too. Squatching Cowboy, man, he's got some good stuff going on too.
He does. In fact, if anybody hasn't seen any of our archives are free. They're free on Texas Front Porch and Brunch with Bigfoot, Mr. Rob. Cowboy was on maybe last month, and he had a great stories for us. Go check out him. Subscribe to this channel. I just got word Ken Gerhard's going to join us here so shortly. He's going to give us what he can give us. We might go over. So if we go over, hey, we go over. We're not on the radio yet. You know, when we go on radio, we got 52-minute blocks. But YouTube, by the way, what we are going on the radio. When I mentioned Odyssey Radio and iHeartRadio, we can still go 2 hours. We can go an hour and a half. It's only be broadcast on their stream for 52 minutes because there'll be commercials involved and things like that. So a few things we have to learn as far as that goes. But YouTube will always be running for as long as we want to chit chat, it'll be on. And so just a little nuance that we have to figure out, which is probably going to be easy. And with that being said,
Rob, you know, as many times have you talked about your encounter, and you can answer this question, or if you're not comfortable, don't answer the question. But I don't think it's ever been put to you. And it's a hard question, and some people are going to beat me up for being callous.
Oh, Texas beat me up.
But you talk about, you know, your girlfriend dying, and how did she pass?
She had a heart attack.
Okay. So see, I can, and she was young.
Yeah, she was about 5 years younger than me, you know, back then. She was in her early 40s.
And see, that's way too young. See, and I appreciate you answering that. I mean, you know, I know it's not easy for you, but I can totally understand where you would connect those dots. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, see, the things that people have to realize too. My encounter was not your typical Bigfoot crossing the road, right?
Right.
It wasn't seeing a shadow of a Bigfoot in the forest or a peeping Tom in back of a tree. The thing vocalized at me, looked at me, yelled, and quite frankly, I thought wanted to undo bodily harm to us. You know,
Right.
Knocked her off the boat. She dies 2 months and 5 days later. Yeah, to be honest with you, I thought Bigfoot was a monster, a creature. I wanted to go back and kill it, and I say that freely, and I don't regret saying it. Today, I don't have those feelings, from what I know, right?
Right.
And that's the thing about education to people. That's why we do what we do. You know, I told a story in Spaced Out Radio about a guy that sent me an email about how he's been traumatized for the last 5 years. He can't go camping no more with his family because
Right.
a traumatic encounter that he had running through a Bigfoot ran through his.
Guess who we got?
Yeah, we got Kent coming back, so we can save that for later. You can see that later on the show. Looks like Mr. Gerhard is ready to roll.
Ken, brother.
Guys,
Ken, man. You know what, Ken? I have to make mention of one thing before you get started. I did such an eloquent introduction for you, promote your book and everything, and here we have this problem. But of course, I'm kidding. Thank you, buddy, for joining us, dude.
Guys, I apologize. I pride myself on being a professional, and this reflects poorly on me. All my bad. So I'm sorry, but Good to be here
Right?
with you at last.
It's not.
Hey,
Not a problem.
don't worry about it, man. It's the life of live broadcasting. What can we say? You know.
That is true. But anyways, we can knock this one out and reschedule another one as we get closer to the event. Whatever you guys think. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, man,
Why,
that'd be
why
great.
don't you why don't you tell us a little bit about that upcoming event, what you're going to be discussing, and that type of thing?
Yes. So the first ever Alabama Bigfoot Conference is scheduled for June
10th and 11th, I think.
10th and 11th. Thank you. It's being organized by Anita Collier, who's been doing a fabulous job setting this up, and I'm honored to be involved. It's going to be in Oxford, Alabama, which is in Northeast Alabama. And so we're certainly in shot of people from Georgia and Tennessee and other surrounding areas. I know you guys are coming down quite a ways. Other speakers include Cliff Barrickman from Finding Bigfoot, Charlie Raymond, well-known Bigfoot investigator from Kentucky, and Melissa Winadair, Bigfoot researcher from Atlanta, and as well as you guys and some other local researchers, and should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And what's cool about it, you know, we'll get some almost one-on-one time with a lot of the people, because they're going to be able to sit, you know, they can of course purchase the tickets to sit down and have dinner with us.
Yes.
You know, and I love meeting all the people at these conferences. You know, I've been hitting Jefferson for the past 3 years. And of course, that's how I met you. That's how I met Lyle. Hell, that's how I met Jason, you know, and well, Cliff too.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it's, you meet so many good people, you know, and you really learn so much about the subject, not just from the speakers, but talking to the people that are there that have had, you know, these experiences.
Yes.
But now your book is now, because Rob was showing it off, this is a little different. This is not Bigfoot, right?
Yeah, my newest book is called The Essential Guide to the Loch Ness Monster and Other Aquatic Cryptids. And so it does deal with, of course, Nessie, or the famous Loch Ness Monster from Scotland. But it also covers other similar lake and sea monsters from around the world, including the Lake Champlain Monster, or Champ, Ogopogo from Canada, famous lake monsters in Iceland, Scandinavia, Russia, Japan, and different places. So, and also sightings of anomalous creatures out at sea, which have been going on for centuries. So it kind of encompasses all of those different types of aquatic cryptids.
Ken, as I mentioned earlier, really quick, sorry, Texas, I'm really intrigued. I hadn't had a chance to read it. I got the book. Like I said, I mean, I don't know if you heard me when you first came on. I plan on reading it on a plane coming down to Alabama. But being that I'm in the Great Lakes state, I'm close to Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I haven't looked through the book yet. Is there anything in where I live that you wrote about, that you know about, where I can go investigate?
Yes, there is a famous lake monster, a denizen in Lake Erie, known as South Bay Bessie. And it's funny, a lot of the lake monsters around the world kind of borrow from the Nessie nomenclature or nickname from Loch Ness. So you have lake monsters named Cressy and Bessie, and you know, all kinds of other similar names. But most of the sightings of South Bay Bessie are rather old, but and many of them have been logged off the coast near Sandusky, Ohio, which is right there in northern Ohio. But you know, the thing about these lake monsters, guys, is that the physical descriptions are very similar across the board. Basically, a giant serpentine animal. And when I say animal, I should say animals, because there are obviously a whole bunch of these things, ranging from anywhere from 15, 20 to 40 feet long, moving up and down in an undulating vertical fashion like this when they're on the top of the water, smooth skin, dark color. And a lot of times people will describe seeing a head and a neck poking out of the water, which the head is often described as being kind of horse-like, and a long neck. And so that's kind of interesting that we have such similar descriptions in all these different
locations.
So, then I have a great question for you then, because about 5 years ago, I was on Lake Erie fishing with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, what a sturgeon is?
Yes.
They get be 12 foot long, what have you. We seen an object in the water, Lake Erie. It was about 15 feet from the boat. And there was we assumed it was a sturgeon, but as you described, it was kind of it looked like a worm on top of the water, but it did have humps in it. But we assumed it was a sturgeon. Do you think that perhaps that was that creature? It was Lake Michigan. And in fact, Sandusky, Ohio is right by Cedar Point, and we were maybe 15 miles south of there.
Okay, well, you certainly are. What you're describing is what most people describe with these lake monsters, including Nessie, that it looks kind of like a big caterpillar moving up and down through the water. Now, it is true that giant sturgeon might explain some of the lake monster reports. As you indicated, they can get pretty huge. Although the eastern species that's native to Lake Erie, I think the world record is only 7 feet. So they get a little bit bigger out west, where you have the white sturgeon in the Pacific Northwest get to be 10 or 11 feet long, but that's still a pretty big fish.
Sure.
The only thing that I would bring up is that sturgeon, they swim side to side. All fish and reptiles go horizontally when they swim through the water. That's how they flex, not up and down. So it would be surprising if a sturgeon were moving like that to the surface of the water. Mm-hmm.
It did remind me of it moved like an inchworm. I said worm early, but I meant like an inchworm, and a straight line, and but we didn't think much of it, to be honest with you. And this is even before I even thought anything about cryptids, to be honest with you. Had I know what I know today, I'd probably said, oh my gosh, there's a sea creature. But back then it was like, big old fish.
A lot of our cryptids, guys, in general, and I think this applies to whether you're talking about lake monsters or Bigfoot or different other things, a lot of times we're dealing with cases of what we call composite identity, which means that you probably have several types of animals involved, perhaps something unknown, but also misidentifications of large, remarkable known species. There are certain types of wave effects that people can see on the surface of the water that look very animated and alive. When you see it's called a seiche, when two boat wakes kind of cross each other in the middle of a lake and they create this kind of undulating thing. But the inchworm thing you described is interesting because that seems to be diagnostic of these lake monsters across the board. It doesn't look like a wave effect. It looks like something large and dark on the surface of the water, like you said, just kind of inching on the surface. So who knows? Maybe you saw Bessie. Maybe there are still modern sightings that are continuing to this day.
I want to ask you a question, Ken. These aquatic cryptids, do you think that it's just like you have Champ, you have the one in Lake Michigan? Do you think it's just one, or do you think there's several of them? I mean, these lakes are huge.
Yeah. Obviously for any undiscovered animal to be out there, there has to be a breeding population. You have to have genetic viability. And that also applies to Bigfoot or Sasquatch. A lot of people that don't know anything about Bigfoot think that those of us that are interested in Bigfoot are describing one animal that's been traversing the continent for centuries. But, you have to have a breeding population. Viability is important. It's all pure speculation as far as how many could there be. In terms of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, I personally estimate there are probably a few thousand spread across North America. Any less than that, and they would probably go extinct. And so it's similar with lake monsters. So in a lot of these lakes, we could be dealing with breeding populations, which, in terms of like Loch Ness, for example, which is, about 23 miles long, a mile wide, but very deep, about 700 to 800 feet deep.
Right.
It's been estimated that there would have to be like maybe 10 to 20 individuals in order to sustain that breeding population. But here's the thing, in terms of lake cryptids, we can also speculate, because a lot of these lakes are connected to the ocean by a series of rivers and canals and things, that it is possible that these lake monsters could be traveling in some cases from the ocean, as sturgeon do, and salmon and eels and other fish that are known as andronymus that travel back and forth from saltwater to freshwater.
Now, Bama Bigfoot asked a great question. And I was just fixing to ask it because it's not something you hear about that I know of. In fact, I've only heard of one really attacks of these creatures.
Yeah, they're pretty rare. Again, similar to Bigfoot, alleged attacks are pretty rare. Now, one of the things I enjoy about being in the field of cryptozoology is kind of exploring a lot of the psychological, sociological, and anthropological elements to these mysteries. So one of the things that humans like to do with all of these cryptids and unknown animals is we like to monsterize them. We like to make them scarier. They're bigger, they smell bad, they have sharp teeth, and they attack and kill people. So certainly any animal can attack and kill a person. Any large animal can. But accounts of lake monster attacks are pretty rare. You have a famous story from Loch Ness of St. Columba back in 565 AD, described in the River Ness seeing a man that had been killed by this lake monster, river monster, presumably a Nessie type creature. And then you also have, also from Loch Ness in the 1950s, there was a guy named John Cobb that was attempting to break the world water speed record. He was in this hyped up boat traveling very fast, and his boat hit something and disintegrated, and he died. So a lot of people have tried to blame that on Nessie. What I've found researching my book is that there are actually many more accounts of these things hitting boats. And even accounts of boats being lifted out of small boats being lifted out of the water by something and then dropped back down. So I don't know if you would want to characterize that as an attack. It's, it could be an aggressive display or something along those lines, but
it could be just incidental. I mean, it's
absolutely. But just keep that in mind that as humans, many humans want to make our cryptids scarier. And so, we're always sort of focused in on the attack element or, things that make them bigger and meaner and scarier towards us. But I view a lot of these things as simply large undiscovered animals that display the same types of instincts that other animals do.
Everyone hears the word cryptid, they think monster, when in fact it's not. It's a lot of things that have been with us for millions of years that are gone extinct, and other things, maybe in folklore. I did have one last question as far as the Loch Ness thing goes.
Yeah.
Is that a plesiosaur?
Well, I don't want to spoil your book for you, Rob, but
okay, good. Please don't.
That is, but I'll just put this out there because it kind of lists this on the back of the book anyways.
Okay.
A lot of people do visualize a plesiosaur, which is a giant aquatic marine reptile that supposedly went extinct 64 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous. But there are a lot of problems with that. One is that a lot of these lake monsters are reported in very cold water lakes. We don't know if plesiosaurs were cold-blooded or warm-blooded animals, ectothermic or endothermic. If they were cold-blooded animals like reptiles, most reptiles are, they would have a very tough time sustaining in very cold water. Also, reptiles are air breathers. So any aquatic reptile needs to come to the surface frequently to breathe. So those are kind of knocks against the plesiosaur theory.
Okay.
One of the things that I speculate about in the book is that these animals are actually mammals, that they're warm-blooded. And this is reinforced by the description of them moving up and down like this, because that is a characteristic of aquatic mammals. They swim up and down.
Yeah.
Seals, whales, pinnipeds. So, we could be dealing with some kind of giant mammal, perhaps an ancient type of prehistoric whale called an archaeocete, which they got to be like 40 feet, 60 feet long. And they very much match the descriptions of these lake monsters like Nessie.
Okay.
What's your take on the reports of mer people?
Yeah, that's kind of more of an oddball thing. Mermaids, I kind of categorize with things like Dogman and Goatman and Mothman, and where you have these weird half man, half animal types of mythological hybrids. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's impossible. You can't have humanoid characteristics. I mean, you have to think of all of these different animal forms hominids, primates, which is what we are, we diverged from everything else, like 50 million years ago, and we went in a very distinct direction. So the idea of a human having characteristics or adapting to the water and developing these sort of aquatic characteristics is kind of far-fetched. That said, I mean, you do have centuries of reports and accounts around the world. And as recently as 2009, sightings of a mermaid off the coast of Israel. So, I mean, there are still modern sightings of mermaids and merbeings. So, yeah, I like to think that behind every legend, there might be a grain of truth. That's a truth thing. And also, we can acknowledge that the Earth's oceans are very deep and unexplored. Ocean covers 71% of our planet. It averages 12,000 feet deep. And even the most conservative scientists will acknowledge that there could be anything down there that we haven't found yet. So you can't rule out anything completely. But on the surface, it is a very troubling proposition that you could have something like a merbeing could actually exist.
Well, one of the most interesting things that I ever heard was getting away from mer people. What was it? A 16-foot tagged great white that they theorized that was bitten in half at a great depth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's like in the Star Wars movie, it's like they say, there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah, that's true. There are things down there we probably haven't seen yet, that can eat a great white shark.
I'm pretty convinced that Megalodon or something like it is probably down there.
It's possible. I mean, from what we know about Megalodon, it was probably a shallow water hunter, similar to great whites and other sharks. So that would be one issue, is you would think if Megalodon still existed, that there might be more sightings of these monstrous sharks. But it could have adapted and evolved. Megalodon supposedly went extinct a couple million years ago. Maybe as recently as tens of thousands of years ago. So, maybe a version of Megalodon may have adapted or evolved to live in greater depths where it could feed on things like giant squids and deep diving whales and things like that. So it's not utterly impossible.
Too, and they do have reports too, if Megalodon does not exist today, though, there are a lot of reports, especially in Australia, of like great whites up approaching 25 feet,
Sure.
30.
Yeah, they're big.
I think this probably, in my opinion, that could be a descendant of the Megalodon, right? Or have some of his DNA in it, right?
Well, I think that's a bit of a misconception, because I think great white sharks really, even though they're similar to Megalodon in many ways, I think they've proved through phylogenetic, there's a lot of things that are being discovered now in zoology due to DNA testing and phylogenetic sequencing that you can find out how closely animals are related. And I think great whites actually evolved on a separate path, but they adapted a similar size, well, not a similar size, but a big size, a large size, and they did evolve similar behavior patterns. So what you also have in nature is something called convergent evolution, where animals will often evolve and adapt the same physical characteristics because they feed on the same types of things and live in the same types of environments. And, also you might have, you kind of hit on a cool point there, Rob, which is that, there are things called atavisms, which is basically like ancient locked in genetic traits that resurface occasionally. So there are certain animals that might adapt a sort of a trait, a physical characteristic that, that may be very ancient, that kind of resurfaces through the genetic coding. And that's why you have certain gigantic individuals in every species, humans, across the board. Occasionally you get versions that are just mutations that are really big, and much larger than the others. So,
well, it's not, I mean, people tell you, when you're, let's take you have your aquarium at home, the fish that you put in your aquarium, really the only thing that inhibits their growth is space, because fish are kind of like that. The more space they have, the bigger they'll get, as long as they have a food source that's there for them.
That's true.
And I don't know. I don't know if I'm. It may not be megalodon, but there's something that's bigger than we've seen out there, in my opinion. Now, or it's, maybe if you've seen it, not survived to tell the tale. But you mentioned deep diving whales and giant squid. That's a whole nother thing too. We see scars that these sperm whales come up with that, the suckers are big around as dinner plates, from fighting these giant squids.
Yep.
And, they've estimated that these things had to be over 100 feet long.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we don't really know. And the giant squid is an example of a legendary creature, a cryptid, if you will, that became a reality in the 19th century. One of the things to keep in mind about these giant sucker scars that have appeared on sperm whales and stuff is that, and some of them have been massive, like you said, is that there is a theory that at least some of those sucker scars may have been, some of these whales may have been attacked by squids when they were smaller. And then as they grew and expanded, the size of the suction scars kind of grew with them. But we don't know. I mean, the largest giant squids currently are acknowledged are about 40 or 50 feet long. But I mean, these are mollusks, and mollusks, animals that do not have a skeleton, do not fossilize much. And so if there were 100-foot squid out there in the past at some point, we may not very well wouldn't have evidence that they had ever existed. So they could be living at great depths, and we just don't see them very often. And we just haven't found any fossilized remains. Yeah,
I think I guess the only thing that would fossilize about it might be their beak.
Yeah, good point. They have a hard kind of bony beak or whatever. Yeah,
but if they're going to die, and if I was watching a thing about what happens to these big marine animals that die, and they either sink and we'll never find them, or if they do bloat and float, they get fed on so much that it's very rare for something, like these whale carcasses that have been found floating.
Yep.
That's rare.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more whales dying out there than we're finding floating around in the ocean.
Absolutely agree with that. Yep.
Now, if we were ever to be able to go down to that depth for any extended period of time and do any excavation, there's no telling what kind of fossils we could find.
That's true, and hopefully that technology will come someday. But logistically, it's very difficult to explore the deep ocean because of the immense pressure and temperatures, cold temperatures and things like that. So, I mean, we didn't get the first, even though we knew giant squids existed, they were all, all we found were carcasses for decades. And then I think it was like in 2006 when we finally filmed a small live giant squid. It was a Japanese film crew. So think about that. It took almost a century and a half to get footage of a living giant squid, so that kind of supports your point there.
And when we talk about, things surviving and being extinct and everything, everybody defaults to the coelacanth.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's one of it may be the only one, I don't know, but that we have in the fossil record that dates back millions of years, but is still living today.
That's true. Yeah. Scientists at the time the coelacanth was rediscovered in 1938, it was presumed that it had been extinct for 65 million years at the end of the Cretaceous. Although my understanding is that since that time, they have found post-Cretaceous coelacanth fossils. So, but not many, it's
right.
Kind of one of those things that's kind of, the fossil record has a lot of holes in it. So,
yes, it does.
So that, there's certainly there's an argument that can always be made.
I had a quick question, Ken, regarding, from what I understood or understand, is that when we go back again to the ocean, or the great white shark, is that the only mammal in the ocean that can kill a great white would be the orca. That's the killer whale.
Yep.
Yet I've seen reports, and I don't know if it's something that the government or is hiding or what, but I've seen reports where there had been bite radiuses and marks that wouldn't support that of being an orca or or killer whale. I mean, what's your thought on that? Is that something that's just made up or drawn up for the imagination, or do you think it's something that perhaps some other agencies are trying to keep from the public?
Well, guys, full admission here, I'm not a big conspiracy guy.
Right.
I have no disrespect for anyone that has those opinions.
Yeah.
It's just, from my life experience, I've learned that a secret cannot be kept by more than one person. So
Right.
a lot of times when we talk about these cover-ups and things like that, you think about how many hundreds or thousands of people over long periods of time would be sworn to secrecy. And
Sure.
so, I'm not necessarily an advocate that things are being held up in an intentionally covert way. Now, that said, I will acknowledge that there are sort of soft cover-ups in terms of, maybe, and there is documentation that, the military or the government, specifically back, in the 60s and 70s may have been at one time acknowledging that Bigfoot very, very well exist. And in fact, you can find records of Bigfoot being listed in different, government field guides and training manuals, what to do if you encounter Bigfoot. So there's a lot of reasons why it would make a lot of people's lives more difficult if certain things were to come to the surface. And so in terms of something like a, Bigfoot or a lake monster, certainly most of the people that would be in charge of managing that situation are underpaid, overworked wildlife, parks department people and stuff like that just don't want to deal with the headaches. So yeah, I think there aren't people that are, necessarily advocating, but there probably are discussions, kind of behind closed doors where people say, what if one of these things exists? Case in point, you guys have probably encountered this too. I did a skunk ape expedition out in Florida years ago, and we actually obtained a government permit to go search for the skunk ape in the Green Swamp, which is kind of cool that we were, we went through all the proper channels. And some of the park officials there in the Green Swamp would come by our camp, and off the record, a couple of them told us, hey, they're out here. There's some kind of big ape-like creature, but, I'm not going to go public with that. I'm not going to put my neck on the line, my job on the line, but yeah, you guys are onto something here. So, you hear those things sometimes from people that are in the know. And so you think, okay, well, there are probably people behind closed doors that are, that have these discussions from time to time. What if, and so forth. So,
yeah, I had I ran into tribal police and sheriff's deputies one night out in Brown Springs, and they told me that two of their officers had Bigfoot sightings out there. So
there you go. And
I mean,
they're not going to go obviously they don't want to risk their career and their reputation. Right. I'm currently emailing with a police officer from Pasadena, Texas, who, along with 3 other officers, saw a giant winged creature with a 20-foot wingspan a few years ago. And, he doesn't want to go on record, but he's like, look, we saw this thing. We don't know what it was. And so, he did want to at least reach out to somebody and talk about it, but he can't go public with something like that because he, probably get fired or something. Who knows?
I'm going to go out on a limb here. And if Jason was listening to what you just said, you're going to be hearing from him, because I guarantee you, he is giddy as a schoolboy right now. To hear that.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff for sure.
I mean, for somebody, of course, he, that was his, his cryptid encounter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guarantee you, he's probably dancing naked around the room right now.
Jason was in the chat. I don't know. I don't know if he's working.
Oh, there he is.
Schoolboy. Yeah, there you go. Open a can of worms for Mr. McLean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dancing around like a giddy schoolgirl. Is that better, Jason? There you
go. Jason will be with us in Alabama, so I'm sure he'll have your ear can on that one.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I don't have permission to, and I do this with every eyewitness because I have a lot of people that
Right.
reach out to me that say, "Hey, I don't want to be on TV." I don't know, and I always, that's the first thing I always tell them is whatever we discuss is going to be held in the strictest confidence, unless at some point you give me permission. And I actually have, in some of my books and stuff, because before I publish someone's name in a book, I always, reach out to them and have them sign a release and say, "Are you okay with going public?"
Right.
And having your name published. And
Yeah.
surprisingly, a lot of people will. They say, "Yep, I know what I saw. Here's the release. Go ahead, use my name." But some people obviously won't, and I'll respect that as any good investigator should, and say, "Okay, well, that's our secret. You're John Doe, or whatever,
Right.
whatever." Yeah.
And that's one of the standards that we go by is if you tell us a report, one, I'm going to ask you if it's okay that I talk about the report at all, and two, what information are you comfortable having out there?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not going to put your name or anything else or even the location out there unless they give me the okay. Because people come to us with these reports and they have that level, they need that level of trust in us, that we're going to keep their identity and everything else, under wraps unless they give us the permission.
Yeah, that is the way to handle that for sure. You have to respect people's privacy. Look, how many people have received ridicule that have gone public, that have received ridicule, and I've actually tracked down some famous Bigfoot witnesses from back in the 70s in Texas, for example. A guy named Johnny Maples in 65 that was famous up in Longview for being chased by a Bigfoot, and that made all the local newspapers there. And I got in contact with him a couple of years ago, and he was just basically, "Look, I'm done. I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's made my life miserable. I'm not going to go." I was trying to get him to go talk at the Texas conference. He's like, "No, I'm done." So, and you got to respect that people have gotten a lot of ridicule, even from family and friends and through the years, and they just want to disassociate themselves. It's almost like they regret, having seen something. So that doesn't.
Oh yeah. I came out of the proverbial Bigfoot closet a few years ago, and it hasn't been easy, but I think if I was going to do this like we're doing, it was something that I had to do,
Yeah.
So,
well, good on you, man. It takes a lot of courage, and that's something I also try to tell eyewitnesses that reach out to me. And I say, look, if you're willing to go public with this, that's going to basically encourage maybe someone else out there that's been keeping this secret for years, and they're going to feel empowered by your courage, and maybe they'll come out of the woodwork too, and we'll get other eyewitnesses that'll come forward and kind of support or corroborate what you saw. So
right.
And
What?
Ken, I was just going to say because not to get into it, I had a traumatic Bigfoot encounter, and it seems like it always comes up, right? And I held that inside for quite some time, and I finally when I went public with it, because I thought I was going crazy, to be honest with you. I'm not getting into my encounter. I'll have a chance to chat with you when I see you, but I was so distraught. I went to a place of dark depths, I own a business. I didn't go to work for 6 months.
Wow.
No, it was that bad. Now, again, I don't want to tell my story. Somebody had died that was very close to me, not because of the encounter, which I thought it was, but regardless, when I finally came out of the closet, so to speak, I felt so much better. And what I love about the community, most people, is I've gotten friends from all over that say, "Rob, you weren't going crazy, man. I believe your story." And because I thought people would think I was just locked me up, put me in the nut house from what I saw, right? And it took me so long to keep these feelings repressed that I was slowly killing myself inside. I felt that. I felt myself deteriorating until I got involved with great people, such as yourself. Not that I spoke with you, but people with like minds and and know what's out there. And when I spoke on it, it saved my life. This community saved my life, is what I have to say.
Yeah, that's well, and you're to be commended for your courage, Rob. And very eloquently stated, by the way. And this kind of goes back to a point that Tex was making earlier. There's kind of a misconception by a lot of people, or I hear this, that, the Bigfoot field is populated by a bunch of jerks and egos and bad people. But, you're going to get a few of those in every crowd. But by and large, I travel around and do Bigfoot lectures all over the country and conferences in every state, and have been for years. And the vast majority of people in the Bigfoot cryptid community are good people, really good people, fun to work with, respectful. There are some egos, mine being one of them. It happens. But, you can always be respectful and have dialogue and discourse with someone else and respect their opinions without being a jerk. And that's why I also enjoy going to these conferences, because, you get to meet a lot of really interesting, nice, sincere people, down to earth, and form relationships, and it's definitely rewarding.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest things, and three people come to mind that, as far as, I know y'all hate this term, but celebrities in the Bigfoot community, I hate to break it to you, you've been on TV multiple times. Guess what? You're a celebrity, no matter how minor it may be. But you and Lyle and Cliff are probably three of the most down to earth, just good old boys, and very approachable, and you're willing to listen to people. And that goes a long way, because, somebody's not going to feel, if somebody doesn't feel comfortable, if you're not approachable, they're not going to feel comfortable telling you their encounter, their story, or whatever.
Right.
And unfortunately, you're right. There are some super egos out there.
There's a few, and it's always been that way. I mean,
and they're always
going back to a lot of the pioneers in the field. And the way I try to explain this to people, and by the way, I appreciate, those kind words. Lyle is obviously like a brother to me. Cliff has become a real good friend of mine. They are really good, genuine guys. And there are a number of people that are considered quote unquote celebrities because they're on TV that are really approachable and down to earth. I probably can be the biggest jerk of the bunch at times. I try not to be. I like to be approachable. I like to meet people, but sometimes I catch myself maybe saying something that I immediately regret and say, okay, maybe I was a little bit hard there. But, I'm all about, the truth and, just being a straight shooter. And so sometimes, you can't avoid stepping on some feelings if you're, a little bit too honest there. But, I like to hear about other people's experiences. I'll give you an example. I was at the Oklahoma Bigfoot Symposium weekend before last. Great crowd. We had a nice discussion. I basically gave my presentation, which focuses on the more zoological aspects of Bigfoot. I'm what is considered an aper, meaning that I think that Bigfoot is probably not an interdimensional cloaking portal. I'm not saying I can prove it, but that's my opinion based on my years of research.
Well, exactly. But that's how you had to say it, based on what you've experienced.
Based on my experience, it's all speculation. That's my knowledge. But when I was done with my lecture, a gentleman came over to me and said, "Hey, I got to disagree with you. I basically encountered a group of Sasquatches, and they began mind speak with me, and they began communicating with me in my brain. And all I could say was, sir, respectfully, I don't challenge anyone's integrity, their experiences. That's, if you've experienced that, but you can't prove it to me. And that's why I have to take kind of the scientific hard line, which is science is about evidence. And unfortunately, someone's testimony isn't always evidence, as much as we want it to be. So, but I also acknowledge that I'm open-minded enough to say that, I don't know. I honestly don't know what Bigfoot is. I have theories and, based on my experience, but there are other times when I can be a jerk. I'll give you an example of that. I was at a Tennessee Bigfoot conference with Bobo, and some other speakers, and someone in the audience came up to the mic for the Q&A and said, what do you guys think about mind speak? And there was a silence for about a minute, and then I just looked at him and I said, I just answered you. So it was kind of a
I'm sorry.
In retrospect, it was kind of a rude thing for me to do, and Bobo got upset with me and kind of said that I was being a jerk, and he was probably right. I thought it was a little funny, but it was a little bit curt and short, and I didn't mean that. I don't try. I always regret that when I thought, you know, in the moment I just kind of misspoke, but who knows? Maybe some people, and in fact, Bobo acknowledged that he thinks he may have experienced mind speak from a Sasquatch. So, who knows?
Since you opened this can of worms, we talk about this. We talk about this quite a bit on here, and I have very dear friends, and I've said this 1,000 times. I have very dear friends that I respect the hell out of that claim to mind speak with these creatures.
Yeah, and
I have a legitimate concern because I'm not real sure that it's Bigfoot that's talking to you, you know, and everyone that I've asked, and when I pose this question to them, how do you know it's Bigfoot? Well, they told me it was. Well, if you jump over to the paranormal 101, spirits are going to lie to you, you know? So that's my main concern is I'm afraid that it's not Bigfoot, that it's something pretending to be Bigfoot to get their foot in the door with these people.
Now that's an interesting point, Tex, because this is one acknowledgement that I always make, because I have friends that are involved in paranormal research. I find it fascinating. It's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but I do find it a fascinating endeavor. So I have acknowledged to many people that there may be a phenomenon, as you said, out there that presents itself as Bigfoot. In other words, something that takes advantage of that archetype and that people perceive to be Bigfoot or Sasquatch related, that is actually more of a metaphysical paranormal phenomenon.
Right.
And, you know, that is kind of a way, that is perhaps a way to explain how people are having different types of experiences and encounters with Bigfoots or Sasquatches. But there was an interesting survey that I read recently, because I'm all about numbers and stats. You know, of course, I've spoken to people that have had these kinds of paranormal Bigfoot experiences through the years, but the vast majority of eyewitnesses that I've been contacted by are people that have had pretty, you know, natural, you know, it crossed the road, it went up a hill, it was drinking water, it went behind a tree. You know, I don't get a ton of those, you know, in my experience. But there was an interesting stat in a book I was reading the other day based on a survey that about 3 out of 1,000 Bigfoot, a sample size of 1,000 Bigfoot sightings, there were 30 that described paranormal or UFO types elements. So that's actually only 3% of Bigfoot sightings. And that's kind of been my experience, is, you know, maybe a very small percentage I get those kind of UFO. Now, it was brought to my attention that part of that might be because people that have those kinds of paranormal Bigfoot experiences are not going to come to someone like me that has maybe more of a skeptical view of those, but they're going to go to maybe a Bigfoot researcher that has more of that kind of, you know, like a Stan Gordon, Ron Moorhead, you know, one of those kinds of guys that have more of a, you know, kind of a cosmic view of the Sasquatch phenomena, which is true. Even the old school Bigfoot researchers like John Green and Renee DeHinden did not write about paranormal Bigfoot or any of that in their books, even though they spent decades researching it. But they very well may have had people that approached them with those types of experiences, and they just didn't agree with it. So they didn't want to write about it or deal with it or whatever. It's kind of a hot potato subject. But before all the haters start piling on me here, I'm open-minded to the paranormal. You know, there certainly could be something out there beyond our comprehension involving some aspect of the Bigfoot phenomenon.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to concede that the entire Bigfoot phenomenon is paranormal. I think there's too much evidence that there's something more substantial.
And here's the thing too, Ken, because I conversed with Tex just a little bit. I do think that some people have had a communication with a Bigfoot, perhaps through maybe mind speak, but I think that's a certain set of people. And I think that, again, as to Texas' point, I think that perhaps it's not always a Bigfoot, it's some other entity that could lead them down a bad rabbit hole. But I will say, we've also had Ron Moorhead on our show a couple of times, and a much respected researcher. And he alludes to the quantum physics, he alludes to perhaps there is mind speak, and he even talks about alien intervention. And there's one respected man, then you have another side of the coin where they have their beliefs. And I am a person that takes all this information from everybody, and I listen and I formulate my own opinion, but I certainly wouldn't say that this is not true or not true, because frankly, I know nothing. The more I know, the less I know, right? So I just have to respect everyone's opinion and roll with it, because do we really know? We probably don't know until the day of reckoning arrives, when our body is transversed into a different energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well put. I mean, that's the bottom line. I'm not a Bigfoot expert. I don't call myself that. I'm a speculator. I speculate about Bigfoot based on my experience, which, I will say I've spent the better part of 45 years investigating Bigfoot. I've done field research all over North America. I've worked with pretty much every Bigfoot investigator out there that you could think of, and I've interviewed hundreds of eyewitnesses. And based on all of that, and I am biased, like all people will say, we have to acknowledge that every human has their own distinct biases based on their life experiences and stuff. And I view all of this stuff through the prism of zoology. As a cryptozoologist, I emphasize the zoological aspect. So I am more biased towards the zoological explanations and theories.
Oh, for
but
sure.
Again, I'm open-minded. I do acknowledge there are things that we just don't understand about, the world and universe around us. And that's what makes it kind of fun and fascinating to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't get enough of it. You really can't.
Well, I don't think that any Bigfoot researcher out there, if they spend enough time out in the field, you're going to run into something weird that you just can't explain.
Sure.
And you have to put that, somewhere and go, I don't know,
Yeah, it does happen.
What I have a problem with is people, researching whatever field and saying these creatures or these entities do this no matter what in every area. It's a blanket thing. That's how they behave. You don't know that, unless you've had the same experiences in areas all over the country and all over the world. You can't say that this is how these behave without exception. You just can't. You can't throw blanket terms or behaviors on these creatures, because I think, personally, I think that these things are as different as humans are. As I mean, we had how many different tribes of First Nations people, from coast to coast, that you might walk, you might travel 100 miles into one territory and be greeted with open arms. You travel 100 more miles walking into somebody else's territory, you're on a spit being roasted over a fire, so I think I think it's just one. I think it's probably how the interactions of the elders of the group. Let's talk Bigfoot. The elders of the group, their experiences with humans in the past is how they view them as dangerous, or just stay away from them, leave us alone, whatever, So, because I mean, we've all heard the reports of, the attacks. We've all heard the reports of, children being led back to camp by a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Those are the good types of exercises for critical thinking. So again, and you make another great point, which is I always encourage investigators to present their hypotheses or, opinion as, based on my opinion, or it could be this, or I think it is this, and not definitive statements like it is this.
Right.
Because that, at least from a scientific perspective, you can't ever say anything without concrete evidence that, and, I have been critical of Bigfoot researchers that say, in my area, there's a family of 12 Sasquatches, 4 females. The females only eat these roots. And it's like, if you can't prove any of that, then, you're welcome to have that opinion based on your research. But, you should at least present it like, based on my experience and my research, this is what I think, not a definitive, this is what's happening, because that's always going to kind of paint you into a corner, in terms of people that might challenge those beliefs and so forth. So, and I do the same, I won't say anything definitive or conclusive about Bigfoot. Again, it's all speculation. This is just my opinion based on my years of research. People are certainly entitled to disagree with me. And yeah.
Yeah. And we actually encourage that in our chat and everything else and comments. Disagree all you want.
Yeah, sure.
And we can have a discussion. Just be respectful.
Life would be boring without disagreement, right? I mean, let's face it. We're human beings. We love to interact. And like Tech's point, I know what he's going to say because I'm mind speaking right now. We learn through disagreement.
We do. And the next best thing to being right is being wrong. And I don't ever mind admitting when I'm wrong or that I could be wrong. Not having the answer, that's perfectly acceptable. I would like to circle back around to one thing. Someone on your posted here on their thread earlier about, it's true, because I kind of said something about, testimony, that it can't be considered real good evidence. Well, there's different levels of testimony. So the person had a good point, which is, yes, it's true that testimony can send someone to prison or, whatever. But, there are certain qualifying factors in that. For example, if John was in Washington State when a murder was committed in Florida, and an eyewitness came and said, I saw John do it. John is the murderer. And yet there's all this evidence that all these people saw John in Washington State at that exact same moment. Then that testimony, it's being challenged by other evidence. And so similarly, when you have, I have different levels of testimony that I acknowledge. The top level of eyewitness testimony is multi-witness testimony. If you have 4 people that saw a Bigfoot at the same time, that's pretty hard to refute. It becomes more problematic when it's one person without corroborating evidence. Now there's different levels of testimony within a singular evidence or a singular eyewitness, because there are different levels of skill and observation. So for example, someone who is a lifelong hunter in Texas that grew up in the woods and saw Bigfoot, his testimony may be more compelling than someone that grew up in downtown Dallas that really doesn't get out much, even though we don't want to disrespect that person. But you have to acknowledge that there are levels of observation that make an eyewitness testimony more valuable, perhaps, or any types of corroborating evidence. If you had a sighting and you also have a footprint that you cast, then that becomes a little bit more substantial than someone that doesn't have that footprint. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to attack eyewitness testimony. Certainly people, are entitled to have testimony, and, you as an investigator, you use kind of your instinct to judge whether that person is credible or not. But, I am more skeptical of more sensational claims. So if someone says, that they are communicating daily with a family of Sasquatches on their property and sitting around the campfire, I don't want to attack that person's integrity, but you can make that claim and that testimony, but I'm not obligated to necessarily believe you just because you said that. I would expect you to have some other supporting corroborating evidence to back that up. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and when I hear something like that, and I've heard stuff like that, I have to ask, why aren't you taking selfies? Why aren't you sitting there like this going, click, smile? I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to be like that, but if I had that kind of relationship, guess what? It's going to be me and Jack Link's dude sitting on the log, taking selfies together at some point.
To interject, because this is a great talking point too, Tex. I get that too. And inevitably the excuse comes, well, I'm trying to protect them. They don't want to be photographed, and I don't want anyone to know they're there. Well, this is kind of a contradiction, because I'm frequently contacted by people that say they have Sasquatches on their property. They're trying to protect them. They don't want anyone to harass them or bother them. But then they reach out to me to talk about it. And I'm like, well, why are you if you're trying to protect them, why are you reaching out to other investigators to tell them about it? Because it seems like that's a contradiction. If you're actually protecting them, then don't talk about it. Just keep the secret. So.
Yeah, and it is too. And the sad thing is too, if somebody had taken a photo of a Sasquatch and it was clear, crystal clear, and it was legitimate, people are going to call you a hoaxer because it's just not that good. If it's not a blob squatch, it's not real, right? So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, and that's just the way it rolls in the community. And
I get a lot of those kind of blob squatch photos from these people that claim that they have daily interactions with Sasquatches. One of the things I always bring up to these people that have claimed habituation situations is send me poop. Because if you have a family of animals or beings that weigh several hundred pounds living on your property, there's got to be crap everywhere. And to me, that's interesting because that's physical evidence. And that would be the easiest way to corroborate something like that. But again, you kind of get into these situations with people like this that, they, for whatever reason, they don't want to give you that definitive evidence. And, they may have their own reasons for that. But that's the frustrating part about talking to some of these people that claim to be true experiencers is, like you said, they don't back up with a selfie or, even poop or anything that, that's more substantial. So I don't know. It's an interesting part of the mystery, and hopefully I'm not making too many enemies on this show because I'm just speaking my truth. That's all. So
but that's what it's all about, and that's what we're all about here. It's like we can have somebody like yourself on that has this opinion, and then we can have somebody like Ron Moorhead on that has that opinion.
And I like Ron. I like Ron a lot.
Yeah, Ron's a good dude, man.
He's a great guy. He's smart.
In fact, I'd love to get Ken Gerhard, Ron Moorhead, and have you guys and have us. That'd be an entertaining show. And what it's all about too is learning, you guys. I'm all about learning. Whether I agree with someone or not, it don't matter because I'm not above anybody to say yay or nay. Because anytime that I can hear someone speak, I get something out of it. I could 1,000% disagree with you, Ken. But you know what? I still am going to learn something. And that's what I think falters with a lot of people.
Maybe that's what maybe that should be our, you know what? I'm not going to say it on air.
Right.
Because I don't want somebody else doing it before we do it.
Yeah, we are innovators, Tex. Again,
I've got an idea. I'm going to make a note of it. And Ken will probably be contacting you about this.
Hey, that sounds great. I'm always good for a good discussion, a good Q&A. We had a really good one last year up at Squatch Fest, which is up in Longview, Kelso, Washington. There was a panel, and basically it was me and Cliff Barrickman and Bob Gimlin and Russ Accord were kind of like the traditional apers. And then the other side of the panel, you had David Politis and some guys that did Bigfoot UFO connection documentaries. And we actually had a pretty civil discussion and debate about, the paranormal Bigfoot versus flesh and blood Bigfoot. And I think, I think we did it as adults, and we had strong opinions. But these discussions can be had. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having, like you said earlier, Rob, just different opinions. Yeah. And that's how you learn stuff, is by, hearing other viewpoints. So.
Yeah. You learn. And for me, frankly, it'd be boring. I mean, if everybody agreed on everything, then, what should it talk about, because I think everybody likes discussion. You like debate. In college, I had debate class, you went up against partners, and that was fun. I mean, and it is stressful because you really get people, man, their insides, their desires, they come out, right? But which is great. And I think we have nothing but passionate people in the community. Yes. And I don't know what Tex is doing back there, but I don't know how much time we got left with you. I appreciate that you came on, man. We'll wait for Tex to get back on here.
Yeah, but I know. I feel bad about the late start, but we've had a good, engaging conversation here. I see lots of great comments and questions in the chat room, so hopefully people are enjoying it.
Yeah, and we got to have you back on for a part 2. We always do a part 2, it seems, but again, I don't hold it against you for having technical difficulties, man. I do appreciate that you did show up, and again, I learned something today, and I know Tex did. Tex, I was getting ready to close out with your final thoughts.
It's been a great conversation, and we went we've went all over the board here, and I love that. I love going down rabbit holes, especially with you, Kim, because you're so well versed in different subjects, and different, not just different cryptids, but when you drill down into the scientific stuff of it, it's really fascinating to me. And it's good to see you again, brother. And I'm looking forward to June.
Yes, same here. We can definitely do a part 2. I mean, like, there's always more stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
I saw a couple of questions here I'll just answer briefly. I've never seen a Sasquatch with my bare eyes, so that's why I'm not 100% convinced they exist. Only 90% is what I tell people. I'm convinced I've heard them vocalize, and so I've heard sounds and found other evidence. And it seems like there may have been another question there that I missed that was right before that. But I can always come back on and we can discuss this stuff even more. I'd be happy to do that.
Well, I can't wait to have you back, brother.
I do appreciate that, Ken, and I appreciate everybody in chat. Share this out. Me and Texan have to make a quick edit to say Ken comes on in 33 minutes.
Gosh.
I mean, Tex and I, we can hold a conversation, and we have that personality. People will stay in tune, but they wanted to see you today, and I'm glad that you came on. I'm glad we got it straightened out, man. And I can't wait to meet you down in Alabama, and I'll tell you about my encounter. It'll blow your mind. And for Tex, this is Bigfoot, Michigan. Rob, Ken Gerhard, thank you. Get his book. Here it is, The Essential. Here it is. I don't know if you can see that. The Essential Guide to the Loch Ness Monster and Other Aquatic Cryptids. I can't wait to read it, buddy. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, BMR, Bigfoot, Mr. Tex, we're out.
Thank you.